To the Monday, August 11th, 2014, Washougal City Council Workshop Meeting. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Boger. Councilmember McDaniel. Councilmember Wagner.
Thank you. Councilmember Wagner indicated previously she wouldn't be here. Councilmember McDaniel and Boger are going to be a few minutes late, and Mr. Scott should be coming in on us in a few minutes as well. Gene, anything you'd like to say under public comments before we get started?
I don't know if I should wait till the other folks get here, or...
Totally up to you. We'll probably get to our second opportunity on the agenda this evening, so.
Oh, really? Okay. Do I go to the podium, or...?
Yep.
Okay, my name is Gene Marlowe.
Go ahead.
And I'm just here to kind of, I guess, introduce myself probably as much as anything. I, oddly enough, for some reason, threw my name into the hat for the I-502 thing here way back when, and knew that, there's going to come some whatever. People are going to look at me one way or the other, who knows, whatever. But I just, I threw it in because I was kind of concerned if that was going to come into our town, kind of how it was going to be managed and ran and all that kind of stuff. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I think that there's going to be some money to be made at it also. So anyway, I threw my name in the hat. Ended up in the number 3 position. And so I thought, it was pretty much a done deal for me. After kind of seeing what has transpired recently and knowing that the person in the number 2 position missed one of the steps to qualify, I guess if it could happen here in Washougal, then I may have a shot at doing it. So I just wanted to kind of introduce myself to you guys and just kind of basically tell you that if I were given the opportunity, I would be willing to work very closely with city staff, police, whoever, to try to make it a, as positive thing as possible, to make sure it's being managed correctly and all that, all the concerns that you guys have. I share some of those same concerns. I know it's changing times and all that right now, and I know it's a very new deal. So, I know you guys are looking at doing a moratorium or whatever for I don't know how long, another year or longer, I don't know. I guess I would ask that you might consider, I don't know the best way to do that, but if you were interested in talking about this, in depth a little more to try to figure out if there's something that, whatever your concerns might be, that if we could come up with something that we thought would work, or I don't know if you guys just totally don't want it at all. I kind of understand it's a hot button item for sure. So anyway, basically I just wanted to kind of put a face to the name, and who knows if down the line at some point it's something that you guys end up looking at doing. I would be willing to talk with you further, however best way to do that. I don't know how all that works, but in more in depth or whatever. And I mean, I don't know that much about it either. I just like I say, share some of the same concerns I think that you guys do, and would be willing to kind of work through it and try to figure out what, if anything, we needed to do to, if it's going to happen here. So
Thank you.
that's all I have.
Thanks, Gene.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming forward and making the introduction to the council.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
It certainly, we do have a public hearing on the agenda for this evening, so that'll be at 7 o'clock.
so I don't know, can you tell, I mean, I kind of have an idea of the direction this is going. Can you shine some light on that, or?
I'd say at the moment, we have no idea which direction it's going,
Oh,
so.
okay. I thought you were looking at extending a moratorium or doing something like that, or
Right now, council's going to have an interesting discussion this evening. There have been a lot of different thoughts thrown out there, and you're likely, well, we know that we'll have at least one council member not present today, so.
Right, right. Okay, well, you know, for whatever it's worth, if I was given the opportunity, I would certainly be willing to work with you guys and try to make it, you know, I know some of you absolutely don't want it, but if we're going to look at doing it, I know the voters voted it in. I know that's kind of a, you know, got its own little whatever concerns or whatever there, but anyway, for whatever it's worth, I would certainly be willing to work with you folks, and you know, if we end up going forward. So,
Okay.
anyways,
Thank you.
guys have a good night.
Okay, going to new business, we've got a couple of presentations tonight. First one from Sweden. Paul, welcome. Come on up.
This will be, tonight will be short, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks to follow up. As you know, we're doing the new market tax credit work, and we provided a feasibility report for the end of phase 1 work. We're now in the process of wrapping up phase 2, and so tonight was my chance to come and talk to you a little bit about what we've done for phase 2. I should have, that's what Rose and I were talking about earlier, should have the paperwork to her by Thursday of this week. That will put our application in to be a CDE, and then that's really this, all from there, we're just waiting back from the feds to say, yep, you're a CDE. So it's really pro forma at this point in time. Also, last week, the application came out for applying for new market tax credits and starting to get to the details of the projects and so forth. So I've had to get Steve working on the phase 3 part of this, even though that you've not, Washougal hasn't authorized phase 3. The application's due October 1, and so I want to give him as much lead time as possible to do the work that he needs to get done. And he knows that he's got to spec his time for the next couple of weeks. So he's fine with that. So what I'll be able to do is provide you the actual application that has the CDE and how it's organized. You're probably wondering who is on the advisory committee and the governing board. And so we have a 7-member advisory committee. The purpose of the advisory committee really is to ensure that the new market tax credit work that occurs within a community actually has a community benefit. And so one of the things that group will have to come up with is a community benefits contract. And so as we're doing new market tax credit work, the individual or individuals that are doing a new market tax credit project will have to sign the contract saying and specifying exactly what benefits that they are providing back to the community. Those that we've asked and have accepted to be a part of the advisory committee, which is a 7-member committee at this point, is your fellow council member, Brent Boger, representing the city of Washougal, Bill McCrae-Smith, representing the Port of Camas-Washougal, and then Steve Hogan, representing the city of Camas. So there's 3 there. Amber Barnes with Boys and Girls Club, Jack Will Robb Center. Lloyd Halverson, representing Vancouver Housing Authority. Wanda Nelson, Loaves and Fishes, Meals on Wheels. And then Kathy Garland, who's with the Children's Home Society. So part of this was we knew we needed to have individuals that service or provide services to low and moderate income households. And so we're able to find at least 4 individuals that are from organizations that are willing to serve on the advisory committee and can serve in that capacity to make sure that we are trying to provide a benefit back to the community, and in particular, low and moderate income households. In terms of governing board, right now, it looks like for a governing board, we're still making sure we get letters of acceptance. It looks like it will be Albert Angelo III from the Angelo family. They have interest out here in the Camas-Washougal area. Let me think about Dan McKay, a longtime property owner, and sold a lot of property to many high-tech businesses in the Camas area. They've had holdings throughout Washington and Oregon. We have Brott Bishop Jr. So he's going to be involved. Dave Lugliani involved, and missing one. We also quite a few people. It'll come to me. Anyways, at this point, it looks like it'll be a 6-person board. Oh, Matt Olson would be Matt Olson, who's done quite a few projects in the area. So the purpose of, or one of the things that we try to do when we're setting up the governing board is create a resume for the organization. So trying to get individuals that have varied backgrounds around development, either from an investment standpoint, land development standpoint, construction standpoint, what have you, so that we can build breadth and depth of the organization from the get-go to show credence to the organization. So when we say that we can build a building out at Steigerwald, we actually have individuals there that know how to build buildings, know the process that's involved in getting buildings built. So that looks like that will be our governing board. So that's where we're at with new market tax credits, or with the process of creating the CDE. That should be completed this Thursday. I'll get the application. You'll be able to review that. I'll be back in 2 weeks when we ask for formal authorization for phase 3. If you have questions tonight, feel free to ask them. If you have questions between now and in the next 2 weeks, feel free to get a hold of me or Steve. And of course, I'll be here in 2 weeks.
So your big 2 steps forward are the application to actually become a CDE,
Right,
and then the formal application in for funding itself.
exactly.
And remind me, Paul, typically when funding decisions are made or announcements are made?
So the application is due October 1st, and what they'll do is, the process is they'll have several individuals look over the applications from various departments, all tied in with Treasury, but they'll review them and then they get a score. And you'll have 3 reviewers review your actual application, so it won't be just one person and they give you a score. It's 3 people, then you get the blended score. And then they're ranked according to that score, and Treasury goes through a second process of determining what allocations made to each CDE. And those allocations are announced around mid-May. And so there's good timing in that one of our primary projects is completing a building out at Steigerwald for the port. And that's about when they are looking to start development of that next building. And so right now, even though on our end we're programming a 30,000 square foot building, it's anywhere between that and maybe as low as 23,000 square feet. And right now the port's going through the engineering process. So when May rolls around, they will be ready to come to the city and apply for permits. And we'll be able to work through the whole process, which is exciting because you'll have another building in Steigerwald. Irregardless of new market tax credits will just help us do a little bit more with that building. And the good news is, according to the port, it looks like they'll have at least one tenant that takes it all. It may be subleases back, or we'll have 2 or 3 tenants in that building. But it'll be most likely, when it opens, 100% occupied. So the good news is we have another occupied building. The bad news is we don't have any vacant buildings.
So the projects that are going in this cycle, are they in the public domain yet? Ones that
Just the one I spoke about. Well, all of them are, because we've mentioned them here, and all the entities that would be involved in that know that what we're up to. So
could you go through them then?
so the second one is another building out at Steigerwald. We've had a larger tenant that's been interested in this area. Even if they don't do it, we've got enough market demand that we would most likely seek out a private sector investor to help us get another building online so that we can start tenanting some space. One of the things I frequently run into is tenants say, I need a building and I need to move today. Last week we had a tenant, they're bringing their company up from San Diego and they want to be out here. They don't need a lot of space to begin with. They only need 5,000 square feet. but I can't find them 5,000 square feet of warehouse space here in the Camas-Washougal area. There are some tired buildings, and we might try to get them into that as part of stabilizing those buildings, or at least get them a beachhead here so that when newer product comes online, they can move there. But I think it's critical that we take steps for a second building out at Steigerwald. And it'll probably likely involve private sector financing.
In the library.
The library mixed-use project, as you're aware, that's been a long-term interest from Lone Wolf. I know the library committee has, I think, Fletcher Far Hyatt under contract to start looking at what does the committee want to see in a library. And I know Lone Wolf has been involved in a lot of those discussions, helping host those meetings. So they're fully aware of what we're wanting to accomplish here. And then the next one is a mixed-use building in downtown Camas. You know, and from our perspective, that fourth one is probably a longer shot, one that would get completed within the next year. It would probably be recycled over for a following application. We're more bullish on the Washougal projects, in particular the port.
Yeah, Camas is only semi-distressed.
It's semi-distressed. We're further along with plans here, and that amounts to quite a bit. So, good news is we have a lot of market interest, both in that program and within the Camas-Washougal area. I thought I would share with you. I just this last Friday got the employment numbers for each of the jurisdictions in Clark County. Scott Bailey tries to get those sent out about this time every year. And Washougal added another 108, they added 98 jobs. So you added 108 last year, 98 this year. So it's a good upward trend coming out of the recession. Camas, on the other hand, only added a net 17 jobs last year. And part of that, there was a lot of movements with companies and a lot of different things happening. So good news is Washougal's continuing to go in the right direction.
With Fisher, they only added 17.
With Fisher, but there were some movements out. I know there were quite a few movements across Camas and Washougal both. So the net result is 17. And with Fisher, their building's not tenanted yet on the second 5-story building. So those numbers will show up this next year. So they'll see a big jump next year. But yeah, it's a busy time right now. We've got another company in Camas that may end up out at the port too. It's a pretty good prospect. From a land use perspective, they may not be able to stay where they're at in Camas. It's a startup business. It's growing by leaps and bounds overnight. And so one of the things they've asked about is the port area. And it's a Washougal resident, so what better than to have your own residence building in your backyard.
Other questions, Steve?
You mentioned the need to recruit low and moderate income people to the board.
To the board, right. So organizations that service or provide services to low to moderate income households.
What's the rationale for that?
The rationale to that is with the program, it was originally designed to go into distressed communities. So one of the things they wanted to make sure that would happen is if developers and investors are going into distressed communities, that they're actually having a net benefit back to the residents within that distressed area. They didn't want to see investors or developers coming in, doing projects and leaving, and it's good for bringing in new folks, but you're not really doing anything for the indigenous population that's already there. So that's the reasoning behind having organizations that service those populations involved. And the requirement, I believe, is 25% of the board has to be a part of that. And I can't remember our numbers here, but I think we're close to 60% with ours. There were some others that we wanted to get involved, but individuals associated with the organizations just couldn't make up their mind. So we'll reach out to them later.
It seems like a strange requirement for something like Economic Development Board.
Yes and no. With all, here's a little bit of my conservatism. With all government programs, sometimes there's a lot more red tape than what needs to be, and a lot more requirements than probably need to happen. Some of it is, as you work through a process, you're getting buy-in from a variety of different folks when you're creating the program. So my guess is part of the creation of that program was to make sure that those types of service organizations were involved in some capacity.
Thank you.
Or at least representation of the distressed community.
Right, exactly. And, you know, for better or for worse, it's just the way it was set up.
Other questions for Paul? More to come in 2 weeks?
Right, perfect. And then, like I told Rose, we'll get a packet of stuff here Thursdays so that you'll have ample time to review it and ask follow-up questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Paul.
Stay cool.
Mitch, what's happening in your department?
Well,
Do we want to wait until Paul comes back?
sure.
Is that a handout on the table? Or not?
This, yes.
Okay.
Jennifer and Brent are backwards.
But that's okay. I can.
Anybody care?
Pardon?
Jennifer and Brent are backwards name tags.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Brent, you never looked better.
Don't mean to upset the way things are,
That's
the natural order of things.
right. Sorry.
Oh.
I think they can tell us apart, don't you
Thanks,
think?
Rose.
You want to let him know we're waiting on him?
So go ahead.
I hate to have you to redo this.
Well, the first part really is
Fire away.
You can watch it on the video.
I went back and I looked, it was almost a year, August 12th, to the day that I did this presentation for you last year. So knowing we had a short agenda, Dave asked me to put some numbers together for you, and here we go. Looking at community development, and I apologize because some of it will be repetitive because I was thinking that Councilor Wagner would be here and that would have been a benefit, but she'll be able to watch it as well, and I'll make sure that she gets a copy, or she probably already has in the Dropbox.
Didn't she mention she was going to do this by phone on one of the meetings of the two that she's missing?
So that she'd be available too, but
She's not.
So in looking at what we'll talk, the who and why of community development, I'll give a building update as well as a planning update, talk a little bit revenue and leading to development engineering SPSA, and talk about work plan, and then have any questions that you may have. So who? I apologize, this got chunked on my conversion, but yeah, the difference a year makes. You recall that we used to have an administrative assistant in planning, Sarah Kasewicz, who had her baby and decided to take on the toughest job there is in being a stay-at-home mom. And so we're very happy for her, but as you imagine, we are now down a member. However, due to the reorganization within the finance department, which you guys know about, we are utilizing the accounting clerks there to help back up Teresa. They've been cross-training with Teresa, and so when Teresa is out, and in fact today Teresa was out, and Rachel stepped in and filled in for that. It worked out very well. So we couldn't be happier about that. On the administrative side a little bit, Jessica Honnell is great with doing our ordering on our side for us as well, and she keeps me straight when it comes to billing and coding and all that stuff. So the finance has really pitched in a lot to help us there. And if you haven't heard, my planner, Jessica Hersig, just had her baby late last month, and so, oh boy, I'm very happy for her. But now we're back to a couple years ago where it's just Mitch on the planning side, and as you'll see, we're running. So why? Again, really just more background information. These, you'll recall, are mandatory areas, what we have to look at. I'm not going to run down the list, but you have them there in front of you, as well as the state requirements of why we do what we do. So in looking at building, an update on there, what I did for all of these is I went back and I did a January to July 2013 to a comparison to January, July 2014. So we're looking at that 7-month time frame for both years. And as you can see on the commercial new construction, we have one. We only ended up having one. And remember, these are issued. I do know that there's several other ones, about 3 others that are in right now that have not been issued. So I see that upcoming, and you heard from Paul, others as well. Commercial tenant improvements down a little bit, and then re-roof. Apparently no one is doing commercial re-roofs this year. We don't have any. In looking on the residential side, we're up a bit, 51 as compared to 49 that we had last year. No duplexes so far this year. We only had 1 last year. I'm not anticipating any duplexes in the near future either, but re-roofs you can see are up a bit, and the addition remodels and those other kind of miscellaneous things are up quite a bit. So all told, about 20% up on that residential building permit side. Other permits that building looks at: irrigation, mechanical, plumbing, and signs. You can see small, moderate, and bigger increases in there, up from 272 total this time last year to 321 this year. So they are moving, and as you can imagine, inspections then are up related to that. 1,987 compared to 1,602 at this point last year, and plan reviews are up 105. And you see higher plan reviews, and I know that I went and looked through the drawer this morning. There's still 12 single families that are sitting there ready to go out the door, just waiting for people to come in and pick up their plans and get going. And we also have on the commercial side other ones that we're working through and before they get issued. So looking at values based on that, residential down just a bit, and then commercial up a bit, and all total up about 4% over the year. Yeah. On the planning side, our type 1s were down just 1 from where we were last year, but we're up 56% in the type 2s, and those are site plan reviews. Those are the commercial things that we look at, and short plats as well. Type 3s, we got a couple. Those are subdivisions. We haven't had a subdivision in the city since 2008, and we've had 2 that have come in now. And I am anticipating a couple of more of those as well before the end of the year. So, and then type 4, those are our miscellaneous code amendments, our marijuana code amendments. You had the water system plan update. We have the transportation capital facility plan update and TIF update, which will be coming to you shortly. And then the port development agreement, which will be coming to you shortly as well. So all that leads to good things on the revenue side. Megan was kind enough, again, plugging finance, Megan was kind enough to help me out and get these numbers together. You're looking at license and permits. That's the building side. We're up, we budgeted 251 for this year. We're at 151, so about 60% right now of that. Over compared to last year, 127. On the subdivision side, you can see we projected 120,000, and we're at 116 right now. So we're at almost 97% of that projected revenue so far. The reason why the July 213 numbers are lower is because we had fee holiday. And remember, there was about 37,000 on the permit side, building permit, and about just north of 15 on the planning side. So that's why you probably see a discrepancy there. But these are still All told, community development's looking at 72% of our budget right now, which is a very good thing, but it has some other consequences as well. Which leads me to our bill for our development engineering. And the original professional service agreement had $15,000 in there for that. And you can see at the very bottom of this, I have just over $1,000 left in that budget. That is, and you'll recall a lot of these are pass-through. So these are fees that we do get back. Not all of them, but a lot of them are pass-through, so we do get those monies back. Those monies go into another revenue pot, which is where the ask will be, and that's where the money is set aside for the additional, for the supplemental professional service agreement that'll be bringing to you, that'll be on your consent agenda in 2 weeks. Looking for another, basically I'm doubling that development engineering fee to get us through the end of the year. But as Jennifer explained to me, it's budgeted in that area. The money that we bring in goes into that area, so we do, it's not reserves or anything like that. We do have it budgeted. So that we will be, like I said, we'll be bringing that back to you in 2 weeks. That will be on consent for that professional service, supplemental professional service agreement.
That doesn't require a budget amendment, though.
It does not require a budget amendment, no. Looking at work plan, this one was there last year because it does take a while, the GMA update, which we have to have completed by June 30th of 2016. We were fully engaged with the county and working through that. There's been decisions made by the Board of County Commissioners that we are party to, and we're tracking those. We have some open houses coming up for the environmental impact work that needs to be done. I think later this month, I believe the 20th of this month, there will be one in Camas. And so we're still tracking on that to make sure that we're in compliance by 2016. On the building side, still looking at file retention to make sure we're in compliance with state law. You'll recall last year we had Mr. Lehman procured some materials, and they constructed some PVC tubing so we can catalog and store all of our commercial plans. So it's commercial plans we have to keep for the life of the building plus 7 years. So everything that gets built on the commercial side has to stick around here a while. And so he actually just completed 2 more, and we had those installed last week downstairs. And so we're working hard to getting all those things cataloged and to make sure that we're in compliance with state regulations on file retention. Shoreline Master Plan update, the project that will never end, but I'm looking to hopefully have that finished by the end of this year. Employment Center, as you're aware, I have to get that back to Planning Commission. That has to come back before you prior to annexations, which is also forthcoming. Also trains, we're going to keep monitoring everything that there is about trains, and we haven't scheduled it yet, but it is a topic for an upcoming workshop to talk about coal and oil trains and what, as a council, a position that you want to look at taking. And marijuana. I know tonight we have a hearing, but we definitely will not be the end of it by any means. And we will continue to watch what the state does, particularly the legislature and the goings-on of that as we move through this year and into the next. So that's it. Question?
You've got a lot of work going on. Paul?
Generally, roughly speaking, don't inspections and plan reviews end up being neutral because you charge for them, but you have to do more work for them?
I'm not sure I follow your question.
Well, for instance, if we do twice as many inspections, that means we have charged, roughly speaking, twice as much money to do the inspections, correct?
Well, I'm not sure that they could directly correlate. Actually, one of the other things that we're working on the building side, because I think it kind of gets to your question, there are definitely more inspections for each project. So like when Tom goes to, you know, a house, he may do a mechanical, a framing, a foundation. Those are all count as separate inspections, but
Right.
it's really only one trip to the site. And so those are the kind of things that we're starting to look at and try to track independently, so we have an idea of how many trips is he making out, and then each trip, how many inspections is he doing. So probably next year, I'll be able to answer that question a little better, because I'll know, well, based on this permit, I did this number of inspections, but he went out there, X amount of time, and therefore I can draw a correlation between the two. But I don't know if it's you double the inspections. And
But then when we get to plan reviews, those, basically, we charge them for what it costs to do those, right?
it's based on evaluation of how much it costs to do of the project is what we charge for the permit.
In engineering, Mitch referred to them as the pass-through. So in our code, some of the engineering review, which is for infrastructure,
Right.
is passed through and it's cost neutral. Money comes in, money goes out. But in our land use reviews and in our building permit reviews, the more we get, the more revenue we get. Whether there's a one-to-one correlation between workload and I don't know. Our
That's why I
fees
said
do not-
generally, roughly.
Right. Our fees do not cover our costs.
Okay.
If you look back at the revenue slide, and I think that's all building and land use fees. I think maybe.
License and permits is the building side of the house.
Right.
Subdivision, zoning, and planning is the land use side of the house.
We projected roughly $370,000 in revenue. The community development budget is larger than that.
Joyce?
Compared to, let me just finish that one thought. Compared to other jurisdictions, are we charging enough? Should we be closer to neutral, revenue neutral on this? I don't need an answer, just, it's a question that will need to be answered.
The council has to decide what their cost recovery policy is and weigh that against the economic development side of it. And other communities are anywhere on the spectrum from they charge basically nothing to completely recovering their costs, and the entire burden of the regulatory activities are funded by fees. Our fees would be higher if we were to do that. And they're all and communities are all across the board. It's just that's a policy expression of the council.
And then just one other quick comment. Trains, especially at 32nd Street, that crossing gate trips the traffic light. It should be possible to put a pen recorder on that so that you could actually see when that gate's closed.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that there's another project for early warning, basically. So when that signal is down, there will be a reader board further out on 14 that I know that they're chasing this. I don't know what the status of that project is.
Trying to get a grant.
Yeah.
To do the analysis.
Yeah.
I just meant that would be a way that we could actually track when and how long that crossing is closed.
Yeah, I counted a train. I was at Schmid playing baseball with my son, and it was 113 cars long.
Joyce?
I want to, is one inspector enough?
Well, we used to have 3, and we clearly we didn't need that many. We made adjustments within the department. I don't think that we are there yet. I've had this conversation with Sean and Dave. I don't think that we are there yet, but we do have some agreements with Camus that could possibly help us out in the interim, but they're busy as well. So, but right now, and the other things in life happen. Tom is looking at going out and having surgery on his hand here in a little bit. He'll be out for a couple of weeks, so we will be down to just Joseph doing all plan review and inspection. So he'll work his schedule to accommodate everything. But I don't believe we're there yet, but we're getting pretty darn close. And that's part of the thing about doing the tracking that we're doing is, the number of trips going out and then the inspections being done, all for, gets into how much time are we spending on each site, and then how far are we going on those, and that will help us really better answer that question of, we're not meeting what we set for ourselves as being a high level of customer service. If we're starting to fail there, then that's where we'll start asking those questions about whether or not we need somebody else.
I just did some quick math. For the first 6 months, we're averaging 16 inspections a day. That's an average.
And that can be several inspections at the same site.
Right.
So how many sites, you don't know how many sites?
They're tracking now so that
Yeah,
so that we can talk about visits. I would think that in our community, because we're pretty compact, I would think that an inspector could reasonably do 10 site visits a day. Most of our inspections are single-family inspections, relatively straightforward. We have some relatively complex structures. As we get more and more complex, then maybe 10 or so, 12 site visits a day is too many. So this is, we're right on the cusp, and intuitively and anecdotally, they know they're right on the cusp. I think analytically, they're right on the cusp. But we are beginning to move out of the busy season, at least historically, and to go into something that's less busy, but sometimes you don't see that. So,
Actually, just on building on that, I did go back and kind of look, and for residential, August and September have been our highest months of permits coming in. And of the 50 land use permits that I showed on there, 21 of them came in the month of June alone.
Wow.
Right before my planner left on maternity leave.
At least it was before.
Yes, she didn't get to everything.
thank you for asking that.
Yes.
It's something that we're monitoring, and if we need to do something else and we can't do it through interlocal agreement or through contracts, we'll have to figure something out. We have other individuals in the organization who have certifications.
Can you hire like a part-time or a on-contract inspector to come in, so you're not getting another employee, but you have an inspector?
There are some services out there who will provide an on-call inspection for you. In my experience, they're not super cost-effective. They can be in real pinches, but if they become really programmatic for you, and that's what you're kind of relying on them on an ongoing basis, you'd be better off finding someone part-time. That's a tricky human resource to find because, they're out there doing inspections. However, depending upon what's going on out there, there were a lot of inspectors who all of a sudden were no longer inspectors within the last 5 or 6 years across the country. And I don't think organizations have fully rehired back to the staffing levels that they were at. So there may be some individuals who would be interested in part-time work. You can only go and see. But we'll track it and be as
But
nimble as we can be.
You mentioned that there's employees that
Yes.
have certifications, so
That's right.
it's a great fallback.
Right, now they're busy, fully
Sure.
busy doing
Yeah.
other stuff.
Keep trying.
Right, so it's
Yes.
got
Rob from
implications.
Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
What's the education requirement of an inspector?
Significant.
High school graduation in terms of formal education, but you have to have certifications. So the certifications that we require, they're tests that you take. To pass those tests, you have to have some relatively significant experience so that you know what you're doing. Yeah.
Dave?
At last, thank you. On trains, 2 questions. First one's a yes or a no. Are you in contact with the railroad?
No, not
Okay.
directly.
Then that leads to my next question.
Me directly, not directly.
Yeah, okay. Today I saw a type of railroad car. I got caught by the train and had to sit and wait and watch it go by. I saw a type of railroad car that I've never seen before. It looked to me like it might be a covered coal car. Is that something they're coming up with?
The last that I heard, that the retrofits to put on covered coal cars was cost prohibitive, and they weren't looking at doing that.
Okay,
And potentially caused combustion, heat combustion.
Yeah.
interesting.
So I don't know what it was.
I'll see if I can get in touch with the railroad.
Would somebody from Burlington
Get a
Northern
picture of
come
that.
and talk to us?
I might do that, yeah.
They might.
Yeah.
They might. They have some, I think they have government affairs staff like large organizations do. The mayor has been in contact with an individual, and, there's that statewide group. We might be able to reach out to them and see if they'd come down. They might want to talk to more than just us at the same time, potentially. Something to look into.
Well, I know we're being lobbied by the anti-oil train people, and I just thought it might be to our advantage to hear from the train people.
There was a group that spoke, I know the Vancouver Council, as they were dealing with the siting question of the oil terminal, since it's in Vancouver's jurisdiction. Councilman Bogerman, all the details on that, but there were BNSF officials, Tesoro, Savage officials, I'm just going by what I read, that came and talked about their project and the rail.
That's right.
It's been put on their plate a little bit. When we were up in Spokane for the AWC convention, we had a dinner, one of the first evenings with the Rail Transportation Committee, and there were folks there from Burlington Northern as well. And a couple of discussions that I had earlier in the day with members of the Rail Committee got into training and what is out there for the smaller communities. And all of that was right after Burlington Northern did their big splash of all their training that they were doing in Vancouver, which was actually over in Portland, and that they had invited everybody along the way. Either the city of Camas or the city of Washington have been invited to any of those trainings, so we went through that with some of the legislators, and they made that part of their meeting that day when they were speaking with Burlington Northern, and then later that evening during the dinner, three of them made comment that they've been to Washougal. They know Washougal. Washougal isn't being invited to these. Why would that be? Why only the larger communities and those types of things? So subtly, I think they were starting to send the message to them as well. Don't just go to the big boys or where you're looking to put plants and anything else. Everybody that's along there is a concern to us on the statewide basis. So I think all of that's going to help Burlington Northern to make some of those decisions, to do some additional outreach to smaller communities, likely in groups and regions, but also hopefully significantly more information on the public safety aspect of what happens. So, yet to have those followed up yet. Jennifer?
Yeah. Do we know if Camas is also considering any sort of statement or resolution
Up to-
regarding oil trains?
Up to this point, they haven't, and they haven't made that, they're getting lobbied just as you are, but they haven't made any sort of commitment to do anything yet.
They did do a coal one, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
Coal, yes.
Other questions for Mitch? Okay, thank you. Go back to work. Okay, with that, second opportunity for public comments, but I don't see any, unless Don has something.
No, sir.
Okay, I've got nothing for you at the moment. Anything from council members?
Nope.
Well, while we have Mitch here, one of the things I've heard, on the marijuana stuff, that I've heard that the Liquor Control Board is not, I wouldn't say interested, but is willing to come and give presentations to local government agencies about where they are with their regulations. I wonder if that would be something we'd be interested in hearing from them.
We can. I know that early on, they came and they met with us, we met over in Vancouver at City Hall building, actually, and Joyce, you were there,
We're in the
yeah.
City Hall building.
What's that?
We're in the City Hall, you mean Vancouver City?
Vancouver City Hall building, yeah, in Vancouver City Hall building.
Where's
And, yeah. And so,
Awful downtown.
yeah, I think that we could. I mean, I think that, I'm not sure, I mean, are you thinking of anything in particular that they are working on that is going to change, or?
Well, just what, what their attitude is about local regulation and,
You know, I guess I'll say this based on that meeting that I had back then. They didn't really care. It is the way that I got, or the impression that I got. It was, we were charged with, the voters told us to do this. The state is telling us that we need to do this. That's what we are doing. We're going forward. How are we going to create this regulatory framework for recreational marijuana? And, it goes from when they'll issue permits, they, regardless of whether we have moratorium or not, they will issue a permit unless we've, chimed in, which we have on a couple of occasions. So, but they have said that the fact that we're under a moratorium will not stop them from issuing that permit. It just, they won't be able to get anything from us because
when did you have that conversation with them?
Oh, boy.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it is at least a year ago.
Well, there's
But
been so much that's happened since then, why don't?
yeah, I guess the thing is that I don't, from the regulatory side, I don't see a lot of things changing. I'd be happy to reach out to them, though, and see if
I
they'd be
specifically
willing
heard
to.
that one of the members was interested in, like Chris Marr is one of the Liquor Control Board members, is interested in coming.
Okay, I'll reach out to them.
Okay.
Well, Joyce, you've certainly got Sharon Foster.
Yep.
If she doesn't have a pulse of the entire group, I would be surprised.
I think so much is happening right now, and a lot's going to depend on what the legislature does, seems to me. But
Or does to them.
Until they, enact some sort of preemption, I think all of us locals are just assuming we can continue to exert our police powers or other powers that we have under the Constitution. We have this AG's opinion that kind of says, yeah, you can do that. And even in his own defense of the act of the voters said that. And until they get some authority to be preemptive, they won't, I would guess.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit confused by that Attorney General opinion because he said he would represent the voters. But is that the voters of the state, the
Well,
voters of the city, or,
The state.
It's the state.
Yeah. There was some, I guess in one of the lawsuits against, there's a challenge to the validity of I-502 in one of the lawsuits, and he's defending the validity, and he interprets I-502 as allowing for local regulation, so that's not an inconsistent position.
Right,
I didn't vote for him, I don't mean to defend him, but.
Yeah, the two things that in the two cases that he's looking to step in is they were regulating based on federal prohibition. And that's where the ACLU argument came up in Wenatchee, and he was prepared to argue that, that the state law is sufficient and should be enacted as such. But if you utilize your constitutional police powers, he's saying
You have the right to.
you have the right to do that as well.
Is this part of tonight's discussion at council meeting?
Well, there'll be a hearing, yeah.
Yeah.
We can ask all these there too.
Anything else? We are adjourned until 7 o'clock.